Welcome everybody to Matt the Lawyer. I am Matt Johnston, also known as Matt the Lawyer, coming to you from Frederick, Maryland. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, please go to the website, www.mattthelawyer.com, and you can check out some of the other content that I've got going on, schedule of events, things like that are going. So you can come see me speak if you're in the area. It'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, just a reminder, everything you're about to hear is not considered legal advice. It's just for education and information. If you have a specific legal problem or you have questions that you want to ask, please give me a call or shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer those kinds of questions. So I've done a couple of videos where I talk about sort of the quick and dirty tips that you can use to figure out if you have a quality contract or a well-drafted contract or not. So far I've done 7 different tips. So I'm going to wrap it up and have 3 more just because I think 10 is a nice round, easy number. So I do want to talk first about stuffed definitions. All right, now when you get a contract, often long ones, they're going to have a section that defines specific terms. And those things are great. It's very helpful. I kind of have started to put them in an appendix or an exhibit at the end of the contract so that people who are reading it can pull that out, take a look at it and say, hey, this is what this term means as it appears in the contract. The problem is that definition should be done just that. It should just define the term. Many contracts will also have what I call operative terms within there, within the definition, and those are things that should be later on in the contract in a more appropriate place. So for example, a stuffed definition might be something like reimbursable costs, means those costs necessary to provide the services under this contract, but that are not detailed in the statement of work, such as travel costs, postage, or storage media, period. Then, after that, a lot of contracts will then say something along the lines, for the contractor to be reimbursed for reimbursable costs, they must submit an invoice within 30 days of the cost. The problem is that last sentence, that should be somewhere later in the contract. It should be discussed in the area where you're dealing with invoices, or you're dealing with costs, or you're dealing with reimbursements. It doesn't and should not be in the definition section. And that's what a stuffed definition is. It is adding operative material to a definition. Definition, just a definition. Okay? Next up is one of these little quirky little terms that seems to appear in a lot of contracts that more or less infuriates me because it doesn't really mean anything. And it usually reads something along the lines of this: for other good and valuable consideration, the sufficiency of which is hereby acknowledged. All right, so aside from the complexity of the language, the whole notion of good and sufficient consideration, well, in another video I talk about what consideration is. Basically, it's what each side is giving up in order to get the promise from the other side. So, good and valuable consideration, well, it should be in the contract. And if it's not in the contract, you don't have a contract. Consideration is one of those valuable things that you have to have in a contract. Each side has to be giving something or giving up something. So usually you're giving money in exchange for services, or you're giving up a legal right that you might otherwise have. That's giving or getting up something. That's consideration. If you see a phrase, good and valuable consideration, chances are the consideration from one side or the other, what one side or the other is giving up, is pretty vague or non-existent. So be very careful when you see provisions like that. They don't actually operate as consideration. And the sufficiency of which is hereby acknowledged, you're acknowledging something in the contract. That's why your signature's at the end of it. Whatever. It's another one of those rhetorical flourishes, I talked about that in another video, that generally mean nothing. All right. Finally, is kind of a pet peeve of mine. It's not really a sign of bad drafting. It's just a place where things can happen and things can go bad. And that's what I call the number parenthetical. So a lot of times you'll be reading along the contract and it'll say something like, contractor has to submit an invoice within 30, open parentheses, the number 30, close parentheses, days of the end of the month. Something like that. All right. It seems like it's going to be an explanatory term. It's saying, hey, look at this. This is so that people can understand. Well, when I read the number 30, when I read the word spelled out 30, I know what that means. It means 30. All right? I don't need some pedantic lawyer telling me that, oh, it actually means this, the 3 and the 0 next together. I know what it means. And if you read it out loud, it would say within 30 days. Well, that seems odd, so why have it? The problem with these parenthetical numbers is that you run into the chance of making a mistake. And a mistake that can be extremely costly. For example, let's say your parenthetical number is talking about money. And the word says contractor is going to be paid $10,000, and after it says $40,000. Well, which number is it? Well, that's a good question. And now you're just asking for a dispute, and you're going to get one. Because one party is going to say, oh, no, it's 10,000. The other party is going to say, well, no, you said 40,000. And the judge is going to have to sit there and figure out what the parties meant. And it's going to be very hard. And it's going to involve evidence. And it does not add to clarity. Remember, the point of a contract is clarity. It's understanding. And when you put a number and then when you spell out a number and then you put a number in parentheses after it, you're just asking for a problem. Because sooner or later, in the rush to get something edited and get it prepared and get it out, you're going to make a mistake. And do you want that mistake to be on your contract? Probably not. So, either have a style that says we're going to put all numbers in numeral expression. 5, 30, 150, whatever the number is. It's always going to be that way. Okay? I personally, for the numbers from 1 to 10, I spell out, and from 11 onward, it appears in numbers. It's just a style. But it's a style that's indicative of somebody who's taking the time to make sure that the contract is clear. Okie doke. So in the meantime, check out my other videos that talk about these quick and dirty tips about it. And I hope you go and check out the blog post. Sign up for the newsletter on the website. In the meantime, have a good weekend. And if you happen to be in Florida or you know people in Florida, I hope they're safe. Take care. Bye-bye.